A
We have
$100
the
million
evidence,
lawsuit
and we
against the
will
Vice
present it.
President of the United States
Justice
didn't
will
happen every
prevail.
day, but they had no idea what was really at stake. Inside the folder were photographs, audio recordings, and witness statements that painted a picture of corruption so deep it reached the highest levels of government. Marcus had spent 5 years gathering evidence, 5 years living in fear, 5 years knowing that one phone call could end his life. The amount doesn't matter, Marcus told the reporters as camera flashes exploded around him. This isn't about money, it's about justice for what JD Vance did to my family. But as the words left his mouth, Marcus caught sight of a black sedan parked across the street, the same model that had been following him for weeks. Inside he could see 2 men in dark suits, their faces hidden behind sunglasses. His blood ran cold. Sarah grabbed his arm. "We need to get inside, now." As they pushed through the crowd of reporters, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he had just signed his own death warrant. The documents in his folder contained secrets that powerful people had killed to protect. And now, in less than an hour, those secrets would become public record. The courthouse doors closed behind them with a heavy thud, but Marcus knew there was no safety here. Not anymore. JD Vance had spent years building his political empire on lies, and Marcus was about to tear it all down. But first, he had to survive long enough to tell his story. The story began 7 years earlier, when Marcus was assigned to a routine security detail for then-Senator JD Vance. It was supposed to be a simple job: protect the politician during a private fundraising event at a luxury resort in the Hamptons. But what Marcus witnessed that night would haunt him forever. "I was positioned outside the main conference room," Marcus told his lawyer as they prepared for the inevitable media storm. "Standard protocol. But around midnight I heard shouting from inside." The fundraiser had been organized by a group called American Patriots Alliance, a political action committee that claimed to support conservative values. But Marcus soon discovered the truth was far more sinister. Through the partially open door, he watched as JD Vance argued with a man named Viktor Petrov, a Russian businessman who had been banned from entering the United States. Yet here he was, in the heart of American political power, handing over briefcases full of cash. Vance was angry, Marcus remembered. He kept saying the money wasn't worth the risk, but Petrov laughed and said it was too late to back out now. What happened next changed everything. Marcus watched as Vance's security team, men who weren't Secret Service agents, forcibly removed 3 people from the room. These weren't just any people, they were investigative journalists who had somehow infiltrated the event. "I should have called for backup," Marcus said, his voice filled with regret. "But I was ordered to stand down. The order came from the highest levels. The journalists were never seen again." Marcus spent the next few days trying to report what he had witnessed, but his superiors shut him down immediately. His report was classified, his testimony buried, and he was transferred to a desk job in Washington. But Marcus had made copies of everything. Security footage, audio recordings, witness statements, he had it all. And now, 7 years later, he was finally ready to use it. The black sedan was still parked outside the courthouse when they emerged. This time Marcus could see the license plate clearly. It was registered to a private security firm that had connections to some very dangerous people. Sarah noticed his concern. "We knew this would happen. That's why we've already sent copies of everything to major news outlets. If something happens to you, the story will still come out." But Marcus knew that wouldn't be enough. JD Vance had spent years perfecting the art of making problems disappear. And Marcus was about to become his biggest problem yet. 3 days after filing the lawsuit, Marcus received his first death threat. It came in the form of a simple text message: "Stop now or your daughter pays the price." His hands shook as he showed the message to Sarah. "They know about Emma," he whispered. His daughter was a college student at Northwestern University, completely innocent of her father's battles. "We're getting her protection immediately," Sarah said, already dialing a number. "But this proves we're onto something big. They're scared." The threats had started almost immediately after the lawsuit became public. Major news networks were calling it the political scandal of the decade. But what they didn't know was that Marcus had evidence of something much worse than illegal campaign contributions. The 3 journalists who had disappeared from the Hampton fundraiser weren't just witnesses to corruption. They were investigating a network of foreign agents who had infiltrated the highest levels of American government, and JD Vance was their key asset. Marcus had spent years piecing together the truth. The Russian businessman, Viktor Petrov, wasn't just a donor. He was a former intelligence officer who had been recruiting American politicians for decades. The money he gave to Vance wasn't just campaign contributions, it was payment for classified information. "Look at this," Marcus said, spreading documents across Sarah's desk. Vance had access to sensitive intelligence briefings as a senator. 3 weeks after every briefing, similar information showed up in Russian intelligence ertuts. The pattern was clear, but proving it was another matter. The evidence was scattered across multiple government agencies, all of which had been compromised by the same network that Vance was working for. But Marcus had one advantage. As a Secret Service agent, he had access to communication records that others didn't. He had recordings of phone calls, copies of encrypted messages, and photographs that showed Vance meeting with known foreign agents. This isn't just about corruption, Sarah realized as she reviewed the evidence. This is treason. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Treason was punishable by death in the United States, and they were accusing the vice president of the most serious crime possible. Marcus's phone buzzed with another message. This time it was a photo of his daughter walking across campus, completely unaware that she was being watched. The message was clear. They could reach her anytime they wanted. "We need to accelerate the timeline," Sarah said. "If we wait too long, they'll find a way to silence us permanently." But Marcus knew that speeding up the process meant taking bigger risks, and with his daughter's life on the line, he wasn't sure how much risk he was willing to take. Outside the law office, the same black sedan was parked across the street. This time Marcus could see the driver's face clearly. It was someone he recognized from his Secret Service days, a former colleague who had supposedly retired years ago. The network was bigger than he had imagined, and they were closing in fast. The first attempt on Marcus's life came at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. He was walking to his car after a late-night meeting with a potential witness, when he heard the distinctive whistle of a bullet passing inches from his head. Training kicked in immediately. Marcus dove behind a parked car as more shots rang out in the darkness. The shooter was using a silencer, which meant this was a professional hit. "Federal agent," Marcus shouted, even though he was no longer with the Secret Service. "I'm armed." The shooting stopped, but Marcus could hear footsteps moving around the perimeter. They were trying to get a better angle. He had maybe 30 seconds before they found him. Marcus's phone was in his jacket pocket, but reaching for it would expose him to gunfire. Instead, he activated the panic button on his smartwatch, a device Sarah had insisted he wear after the first death threat. The footsteps were getting closer. Marcus could hear at least 2 different sets of boots on the pavement. They were coordinating their attack, which meant they were professionals. Suddenly, sirens wailed in the distance. The panic button had worked. The shooters hesitated. Then Marcus heard the sound of running feet. By the time police arrived, the attackers were gone. "This was a warning," Detective Ray Morrison told Marcus as they examined the bullet holes in the wall behind where he had been standing. "If they wanted you dead, you'd be dead." But Marcus knew better. The attack wasn't meant to kill him. It was meant to terrify him into backing down. What they didn't understand was that Marcus had already prepared for this possibility. The next morning, Marcus met with Sarah at a secure location, a safe house that she had arranged through contacts in the FBI. The walls were lined with documents, photographs, and recording equipment. "We got a break," Sarah said, her eyes bright with excitement. "One of the journalists who disappeared from the Hampton fundraiser isn't dead. Maria Santos is alive, and she's been in hiding for 7 years." Marcus felt a surge of hope. "Where is she?" "Canada. She's been living under an assumed identity, but she's willing to testify if we can guarantee her safety." This was the breakthrough they needed. Maria Santos was an investigative reporter who had been tracking foreign interference in American politics for years. If she was alive, she could provide first-hand testimony about what she had witnessed at the fundraiser. But getting her to testify would be incredibly dangerous. The same people who had tried to kill Marcus would certainly try to kill Maria if they knew she was still alive. "There's something else," Sarah continued. "Maria claims she has video evidence from the fundraiser. She managed to smuggle out a recording device before they grabbed her. Marcus felt his heart racing. Video evidence would be impossible to deny or discredit. It would be the smoking gun that could bring down JD Vance and his entire network. But first, they had to get Maria back to the United States alive. And with professional killers hunting them, that was going to be the most dangerous part of their mission yet. Marcus looked out the window of the safe house. The black sedan was nowhere to be seen, but he knew they were still watching. The network had resources that most people couldn't imagine, and they wouldn't hesitate to use them. "How do we get her here without getting her killed?" Marcus asked. Sarah smiled grimly. "We're going to need help from some very powerful people, and we're going to have to trust that there are still good people in government who want to see justice done." But as Marcus had learned over the past 7 years, trusting anyone in government was a dangerous gamble, and with his daughter's life still at stake, he wasn't sure he could afford to take that risk. Maria Santos looked nothing like the confident investigative reporter Marcus remembered from 7 years ago. The woman who met them at the secure facility in Toronto was thin, nervous, and constantly checking over her shoulder. "I've been running for so long," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Every day I wondered if they had found me." But despite her fear, Maria had something that could change everything. Hidden in a safety deposit box in Montreal was a video recording that showed JD Vance accepting briefcases full of cash from Viktor Petrov while discussing classified intelligence information. "I had a button camera," Maria explained. "Back then the technology was new, but it worked. I recorded everything that happened in that room." Sarah leaned forward. "Can you identify everyone who was present?" "Not just identify them," Maria said. "I can tell you exactly what they discussed." Vance was selling information about military operations in Eastern Europe. Petrov was paying him $50,000 per intelligence briefing. The implications were staggering. If Maria's testimony was accurate, JD Vance hadn't just taken illegal campaign contributions, he had actively betrayed his country for money. But getting Maria to testify would require bringing her back to the United States, where the same people who had tried to kill Marcus were actively hunting for her. "They killed the other 2 journalists," Maria said, "Tom Bradley and Jennifer Chen. They were my colleagues, my friends. Petrov's men grabbed them first, and I managed to escape through a services." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "How do you know they're dead?" "Because I've been tracking the network for 7 years, Maria replied. "I know who they are, how they operate, and what they're capable of. Tom and Jennifer were murdered 3 days after the Burza. Their bodies were never found." The room fell silent as the weight of Maria's words sank in. They weren't just dealing with political corruption. They were dealing with a network of killers who had been operating with impunity for years. "There's something else," Maria continued. "JD Vance isn't the only politician they've compromised. I have evidence of at least 12 other elected officials who have been taking money from foreign agents." Sarah's eyes widened. 12 others? Senators, governors, even a federal judge, Maria confirmed. "This network has been systematically infiltrating American government for decades. Vance was just their most successful recruit." Marcus realized they were looking at the biggest political scandal in American history. But with that realization came a terrifying truth. The network they were fighting had resources and connections that reached the highest levels of government. "We need to get you back to the United States," Sarah said to Maria. "But it's going to be dangerous." Maria nodded. "I know, but I've been hiding for 7 years. I'm tired of running. It's time to fight back." As they planned Maria's return to the United States, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. The network had been one step ahead of them from the beginning. What made them think they could outsmart professional killers and corrupt politicians? But as he looked at Maria's determined face, Marcus realized they had no choice. Too many people had died to keep these secrets buried. It was time to bring the truth to light, no matter the cost. The video evidence Maria had would be devastating to JD Vance's political career, but first they had to get her back to the United States alive, and with professional killers hunting them, that was going to be the feat of their lives. The plane carrying Maria Santos from Toronto to Chicago was supposed to be a secret. Only 3 people knew the flight details: Marcus, Sarah, and a trusted FBI contact, who had arranged for Maria's safe passage. But as the plane descended toward O'Hare Airport, Marcus received a text message that made his blood run cold. "We know she's on flight AC 247. Last chance to walk away." "They know," Marcus said, showing Sarah the message. "The network has someone inside the FBI." Sarah's face went pale. "We need to warn the pilot. They can't land at O'Hare." But it was too late. The plane was already on final approach, and changing course now would only confirm that they knew about the trap. Marcus watched helplessly as the aircraft touched down at one of the busiest airports in the world. "Maria's using a false identity," Sarah said, trying to stay calm. "Maybe they won't be able to find her in the crowd." But Marcus knew better. The network had resources that most people couldn't imagine. If they knew which flight Maria was on, they probably knew exactly where she was sitting. Marcus's phone rang. It was Detective Morrison from the Columbus Police. "We've got a problem," Morrison said. "Your daughter's college called. Emma didn't show up for her morning classes, and her roommate says she never came home last night." Marcus felt the world spinning around him. "They took her." "We don't know that yet," Morrison said, "but we're treating it as a kidnapping. Every available unit is looking for her." The message was clear. The network had his daughter, and they were using her as leverage to force him to drop the lawsuit. But Marcus had come too far to back down now. "We proceed as planned," he told Sarah. "If I give up now, Emma dies anyway. The only way to save her is to expose the entire network." At O'Hare Airport, Maria Santos walked through the terminal using the identity documents that Sarah had provided. She looked like any other business traveler, but Marcus knew that trained killers were watching every exit. Maria's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Change of plans. Don't go to baggage claim. Exit through Terminal 3 and take the blue line to downtown. We'll meet you there." But as Maria walked toward the exit, she noticed something that made her heart race. A man in a dark suit was following her, staying exactly 20 feet behind. When she turned left, he turned left. When she stopped to look at her phone, he stopped too. Maria had spent 7 years running from these people. She knew the signs of professional surveillance, and now they had found her. She ducked into a women's restroom and called Sarah. "They're here. At least one, maybe more. Can you lose them?" "I can try, but if they've got the exits covered, I'm trapped." Maria looked around the restroom. There was a service door marked "Employees Only" near the back. It was her only chance. She picked the lock using tools she had learned to use during her years in hiding. The door opened into a service corridor that ran behind the terminal shops. If she could make it to the other end, she might be able to escape. But as she ran down the corridor, Maria could hear footsteps behind her. They were closing in fast. Meanwhile, Marcus was racing through downtown Chicago traffic, trying to reach the meeting point before Maria's pursuers caught up with her. But every minute that passed made him more certain that they were walking into a trap. His phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. "Hello," Marcus said, a voice with a slight Russian accent. "I believe we have something that belongs to you." Marcus's blood turned to ice. "If you hurt her, I'll kill you." "That's not necessary," the voice replied. "All you have to do is call off your lawyer, withdraw the lawsuit, and forget about Maria Santos. Do that, and your daughter comes home safely. And if I don't, then you'll never see her again." The line went dead, leaving Marcus alone with the most impossible choice of his life. Save his daughter or save his country. But as he drove through the streets of Chicago, Marcus realized there might be a third option, one that would require him to risk everything he had left. Marcus made his choice at 11:47 p.m. in a parking garage in downtown Chicago. He would not abandon Maria Santos, and he would not let the network get away with their crimes. But saving his kid would require a plan so dangerous it would either destroy the entire conspiracy or get them all killed. "You're insane," Sarah said when Marcus explained his plan. "You want to walk into their trap?" "It's the only way," Marcus replied. "They think they have all the leverage because they have Emma, but they don't know about the insurance policy." The insurance policy was a dead man switch that Marcus had set up months ago. If anything happened to him, copies of all their evidence would be automatically sent to every major news outlet in the country. The network couldn't kill him without exposing themselves. Maria Santos had managed to escape from O'Hare Airport, but just barely. She was now hiding in a safe house on the south side of Chicago, but they all knew it was only a matter of time before the network found her again. "The video evidence is our only chance," Marcus said. "If we can get it to the media before they silence us, we win." But first they had to get Emma back safely. And that meant meeting with the people who had been trying to kill them. The meeting was set for midnight at Navy Pier. Marcus would come alone, unarmed, and surrender himself in exchange for his daughter's life. But what the network didn't know was that Maria would be hidden nearby with a camera, recording everything. "If this goes wrong, you run," Marcus told Maria. "Don't try to save me. Just get the evidence to the media and tell the world what JD Vance really is." As Marcus walked toward the meeting point, he could see figures moving in the shadows. The network had brought at least 6 men, all of them armed and dangerous. His daughter was nowhere to be seen. "Mr. Thompson," said the man with the Russian accent that Marcus had heard on the phone. "Thank you for coming. I am Viktor Petrov." Marcus felt a surge of hatred. This was the man who had corrupted JD Vance, who had murdered innocent journalists, who had threatened his daughter's life. "Where is she?" Marcus demanded. "Safe," Petrov replied. "For now. But that depends entirely on your cooperation." Petrov explained what he wanted. Marcus would withdraw the lawsuit, destroy all evidence, and never speak about what he had witnessed. In return, Emma would be released unharmed. "And if I refuse, then you will watch your daughter die, and then you will die too." But Marcus had one more card to play. He pulled out his phone and showed Petrov a live video feed. It was JD Vance himself, sitting in what appeared to be a hotel room, completely unaware that he was being recorded. "Your friends in government aren't as loyal as you think," Marcus said. "We've been watching the vice president for weeks. We know about the offshore accounts, the classified documents in his personal safe, Airfirm." Petrov's calm demeanor cracked for the first time. "That's impossible. Maria Santos isn't the only witness who survived," Marcus continued. "There are others, people inside the government who have been feeding us information for months. If anything happens to me or my daughter, they'll release everything." It was a bluff, but it was the only chance Marcus had. He watched as Petrov spoke quietly into a radio, probably checking with his superiors about this unexpected development. In the distance, Marcus could see police cars approaching. Sarah had called in the cavalry, but whether they would arrive in time was another question. "You've made a mistake, Mr. Thompson," Petrov said finally, "but perhaps we can still reach an arrangement." That's when Marcus saw her. Emma was being held in a black van about 50 yards away. She looked terrified but unharmed. If he could just keep Petrov talking for a few more minutes, the police would arrive and this nightmare would finally be over. But as sirens wailed in the distance, Marcus realized that the network had one final surprise waiting for him. The police cars weren't coming to rescue him. They were coming to arrest him.
"You see," Petrov said with a cold smile, "we have friends in many places, including the Chicago Police Department. You are about to be arrested for treason, Mr. Thompson, and your daughter will disappear forever."
Marcus felt the walls closing in around him, but as police officers approached with their weapons drawn, he heard something that gave him hope. Maria Santos was broadcasting live on social media. Everything that had happened at Navy Pier was being streamed to thousands of viewers in real time. The network's final gambit had backfired spectacularly. Within minutes, the video had gone viral. Major news outlets were picking up the story, and somewhere in Washington, JD Vance was about to discover that his political career was over. The truth was finally out, and no amount of money or political power could put it back in the bottle. As Marcus was led away in handcuffs, he smiled for the first time in years. His daughter was safe, the evidence was public, and the network that had terrorized him for so long was finally exposed. JD Vance's $100 million lawsuit was over. But the real trial was just beginning.